Hello and welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a little while since I last posted a video, but I've had a lot of projects on my plate lately. I'm currently working on revising my latest narrative campaign, Night of the Black Moon. It's a 5-game narrative campaign where players are investigating mysterious cult-like activity and chasing down the mysteries of a secret organization inside of Mordheim over 5 scenarios with branching path, unique epilogues, unique items, and a pretty cool story with a pretty cool climax at the end of it. So I've had that on my plate. I've also recently launched a crowd sale for one of my board games that I've been working on for a long time. It's called Spacers. It's an open world space adventure board game, and that's for sale on a print-on-demand service on the Game Crafter. And then also, I've been making some preparations for STG Fest down in San Diego, which is coming up as of the time of recording this video. It's coming up this next weekend. I hope to go down there and have some cool Mordheim games and meet some fellow players and just overall have a good time doing hobby stuff with a bunch of other nerds. Today, I wanted to talk about something that kind of came up for me when I started getting into Mordheim. Mordheim has all of these unique factions and unique warbands, and I'm the kind of gamer who wants to play all of them. You know, I want to have my Reichlanders and my undead and my witch hunters, and I want to have hired swords to go with all of them. So I like to fully build and paint up each warband before I put them on the table, just because that's kind of the part of the that's kind of my motivation for painting. I try to tell myself I can't play a warband until all the models are painted, and that can be good if you like painting and you don't mind, you know, sticking with only your painted warbands for a while. But if you do enjoy, you know, trying out different warbands, that's not a very good strategy to take if you want to quickly try out new warbands. So I wanted to introduce a topic to players. I'm not sure what to call the topic really, other than it's sort of like proxying, which is, you know, using a model as a substitute for a different type of warrior, even if it doesn't quite fit the aesthetic that you're trying to match. But you know, here on the table I have a hodgepodge of miniatures here. I've got my, you know, a starting Mercenary warband, themed mostly like Reichlanders with their red and white and their militaristic garb. I've got about a quarter of a witch hunter warband. I've got a couple hired swords in the ogre and the halfling. I've got a random Dungeons and Dragons bear, and I've got about half of an undead warband here. This doesn't look like you can make much out of it other than a mercenary warband, but if you're okay with proxying, you could turn this group of 27 miniatures into 8 warbands. And that's just picking from the 1A list on broheim.net. Well, it's cool to have, you know, custom models for every single warband in the rulebook. That's not always attainable for the average player, and it really prevents you from trying out new warbands quickly because you have to build and paint an entirely new warband. But I kind of wanted with this video to show you that if you just have a core group of warriors, most like, you know, something like the Mercenaries, you can actually build a lot of warbands out of this core group of models. And that's why I always encourage people when they're first getting into Mordheim to just build a Mercenary warband. And from just that Mercenary warband, I want to show you how you can take the first group of models you build and slowly add more to it to flesh out additional warbands and at least give you a starting point for that warband until you make more dedicated models for it. So here, of course, is my Mercenary warband. This is styled most like a Reichlander warband. Like I explained in another video, a Mercenary warband, they all sort of perform similarly. They have very minor differences. For example, Reichland marksmen are better at shooting, and they get their leader has a wider range of leadership. Mordheim, their heroes are stronger in melee combat. And then of course there's Marienburg, who they get some more gold to start, so you can start with a bigger warband. But there's no reason why this group of models here couldn't represent any of those factions. But another cool thing about the Mercenary faction is, as the game was expanded, there are more Mercenary factions that you probably will have models to represent if you have just your average Mercenary faction like this one. For example, if you wanted to run your mercenaries as an Averlander mercenary group, you could have your captain, give him a sergeant, 2 Bergjägers, and your single Youngblood to cover your heroes. But then your warband also gets mountain guards, marksmen, and they also have their own halfling henchmen. So if you have at least one halfling, then you can start on a halfling henchman group. And that would be a perfectly serviceable group of Averlanders. If you wanted to further change it up and play something like Kislevites, if you drop the halfling, now you have your Drazina captain, your bear tamer, your Isal, and maybe 2 youths. Maybe you've got some Streltsy, some Cossacks, some warriors, and your tamed bear. Now, just by adding a single bear model to your Reiklander or other mercenary group, you suddenly have models for a Kislevite warband. There's also the Ostlander mercenary group. So instead of your Drazina captain and your bear tamer and such, you could have your elder, your 2 blood brothers, and your priest of Tal. And then following them, you have your kin, your ruffians, your Jaegers, and your single ogre. Now you have a perfectly serviceable Ostlander warband. All we did was substitute out that bear for an ogre and then add a single priest. And that priest doesn't have to be detailed like a priest of Tal or a priest of Sigmar or something. If you have kind of a generic priest like this, who's really just a guy in a robe with a staff, he can serve as so many different things. He could even serve as a warlock if you wanted something like that. So that's the last of the mercenary groups in the 1A category. Why don't we move on to something a little different? What if you want to play witch hunters? Well, any one of these guys could be a serviceable captain. So let's call this guy our witch hunter captain. So maybe you start with your witch hunter captain, your warrior priest, and why don't we call these ranged guys your 3 witch hunters? Now you've got all the heroes you need for a witch hunter warband. Then maybe you want to take some zealots. If we add some wolves, you can run these as warhounds. And then to round off the warband, you can add some flagellants. So by using models that are multi-use, like this staff-wielding guy here, and these wolves, just by adding a couple more guys, like these flail-wielding flagellants, you have yourself a perfectly good witch hunter warband. Stylistically, they might not be perfect. For example, these guys might look a little too militaristic to be witch hunters, but on the table, they're going to play just fine. And thematically, they don't look too off. Plus, you're saving a ton of money by not having to buy an entire warband up front just to try playing something else. And the last warband we'll look at is converting this group here into an undead warband. So if we drop all the humans from the start, we'll keep the warhounds because those are fitting. All we need to do is add a vampire and how about a handful of ghouls? I don't normally run zombies, but you could add some zombies. Cheap zombies are pretty easy to come by. And then for the rest of our heroes, you can use that staff-wielding guy as your necromancer, and then any one of these models can be serviceable dregs. I kind of like the look of these guys as dregs. They look a bit crazed. Or you could just use a handful of your generic soldiers from your mercenary warband, and they could be dregs. Or if one of them is carrying a bow or something, you can substitute one of these guys in. And just like that, you've got yourself a perfectly good undead warband. For me, the main joy of Mordheim comes from building new warbands and seeing how far I can take them. And it can get a little dry playing the same mercenary or witch hunter warband over and over again. And having the specific models just for that warband might make it a little limiting on what other warbands you can play. For example, if you were to collect all Skaven units, it could be hard to branch out from anything other than Skaven, unless you're really okay with your witch hunters looking like a bunch of Ratmen or something. I'm not totally against proxying, especially if you just want to try something out. There's nothing wrong with just collecting the key units you need to fill out the warband and make it unique, and then filling in the rest of the models with some more generic units. By doing this, you'll be saving a lot of money, and you'll get to try out way more warbands than you would if you were going to collect the whole warband at once. And that's not saying you have to stop once you get to this number. For example, if you're building up your Witch Hunter warband, you can slowly start substituting out the wolves you've painted for your undead warband with actual warhound miniatures. Or for your undead warband, you can slowly paint new dregs to replace the generic ones you took from your mercenary warband. Remember, the most important thing is to just play the game and have fun with it. Your models don't need to be to any kind of professional standard, and they don't even need to totally look like what they actually represent. As long as you're communicating with your opponent and letting them know what's what, then you shouldn't have any problem. So my advice for anybody wanting to start collecting multiple warbands at the same time is to start with a mercenary warband and then slowly build up the other warbands as you go. Paint all the specific models you need to make the warband unique, and just substitute in models that you already have for the things you're missing. As you go, you can slowly fill in with the rest that you need. So thanks for watching another video. I hope to have some more Mordheim content out here in the future. Like I said, the weekend after I'm shooting this, I'll be heading down to San Diego for SDG Fest, and hopefully I'll get some cool footage of our games that we played there. I've got a unique game mode in mind that I've been working called the Clattering, and I hope to test it a bit more at SDG Fest and get some documentation out there for people to try it out for themselves. It's basically a way to play Mordheim simultaneously, as in each player takes their turn at the same time, and it's perfect for hosting battles with 3, 4, 5, even 6 players, all at a giant table where there might be multiple battles going on in different fronts, and it should speed up the game quite a bit. Anyway, thanks again for watching, play more Mordheim, and I hope you have fun.